So I looked up the definition of a tipping point. An occurrence that causes significant change. So I was thinking about that, and I recently had a career change. I was a teacher, but I'm now retired. But I have a part-time gig. I work with trees. You see, you just don't plant a tree and walk away from it. They need care, just like everything does, especially a seedling. You know, maybe a couple thousand seeds and you'll get one seedling in the forest. And then out of those seedlings, you'll need a couple thousand of those to get one tree. And then it has to hang out until another tree falls over. And then it's a race for the sunlight. Well, when I'm out there caring for trees, I have time to think, because I'm usually working by myself. That's if you don't count the wasps that live in the tubes that we plant the trees in, and sometimes snakes. And I did find one gray tree frog, too, this summer, which was really cool, because I'd never seen one before. I got to thinking, how'd I get here? And I thought back. When I was in third grade, we moved from West York Borough to the suburbs of the Brogue. We were sandwiched between the metropolis of New Bridgeville and the Brogue. And if you've never heard of those, there's a darn good reason, because there's not much there, including people. But it was perfect. Well, my brother and I, who's 13 months younger than me, so we're almost twins, we discovered the playground very quickly. It was the woods out back, unlike anything that we'd ever seen before. And in the woods, we built forts, which is what I think every kid probably does in the woods. We cleared trails, we fished, we hunted with bow and arrow, which means we never got anything, but we still shot anyway. And in the wintertime, we would sled on our trails and ski. Now, you're probably thinking, I didn't know there was a ski resort in the Brogue. There's not. It was hillbilly skiing. I tried to convince my brother that we only had one pair of skis for the two of us, that I got the downhill part, and then he could have them for the uphill part. That didn't work. But we shared the skis, and we would ski through the woods on the trails that we cleared, and then walk back up. It was wonderful. Then one day, some trucks pulled up with a lot of heavy equipment. And the next day, the woods was filled with the buzzing of chainsaws. Now, we knew these woods like the back of our hand by this point. We even knew a lot of the bigger trees because we had gone to visit them. Well, down the trees came. And they cut down every tree, which confused me. They didn't even let the little ones stand. Well, through my investigation, I learned that this was a technique called clear cutting. Yeah, no shit. And they left the tops. All they took were the trunks. So the woods were a mess. Our trails were covered. Our forts were destroyed. And there was one tree in particular that I really liked. It was a hollow red maple tree down by the creek. And it had honeybees in it. They even knocked it down. This tree withstood the floods from Agnes. And if you don't know what Agnes is, well, sorry. Those of us with gray hair, we know what that is. But the honey tree was knocked down. This whole thing really bothered me. And I couldn't figure out why. Other than that, it destroyed our playground, but it bothered me on a much deeper level. So this went on, and about 20 years later, one of my colleagues asked me if I would take a grad class with him. I'm like, sure. It was on environmental ethics. So we took this class at Penn State Harrisburg. The professor, he was brilliant, he was challenging, but he was an arrogant asshole. You know, it was that simple, really full of himself. But for some reason, I liked him. My buddy that I took the class with didn't like him. He dropped out of the class. I stuck with it. Well, we discussed the trees and the owls in the Pacific Northwest, and I shared with the professor during break my dilemma. Like, I couldn't figure out why it bothered me so much that they cut these trees down. He said, well, that's a good thing. You just got your topic for your research paper in here. He wanted me to write a paper on the Lorax, and he wanted me to examine the ethics in it. I finally got my answer. Upon my investigation, my tipping point there is I discovered that all living things have standing and a right to live, and I wasn't the only person that felt this way, and I have no reason to feel weird about it. So it marked a significant change in my life. So I work with trees today, and I couldn't be happier. I loved working with students. They're a lot like trees. They need a lot of care, but I love working with trees.